Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Table. A lot to talk about, man. College basketball. These games are getting to be as intense as college football games. Lot happened last night. I think the rule of the night, Wednesday night in SEC basketball is don't build a big lead because you're going to lose. LSU up big at home against Missouri, loses the game. Auburn up big by 17 on the road at Alabama. um, Such a well officiated game. Loses the game. I look. You've got 40 minutes to get the job done, and again, wow. I don't know what to think. Uh, how good the SEC is. If it's not as good as the Big 12, but there's a lot of teams in the SEC that are really close, trying to get NCAA bids. Uh, Alabama, they won the SEC. Good for them. Second time in the last 3 years. Last year, Auburn won it. Kentucky loses at home on senior night to Vanderbilt. And bring Billy Roberts is in with us right now. And Billy, after the Kentucky loss at home, John Calipari, who's getting paid 85 or $100 million to, they can't get rid of him at Kentucky, refuses to do his post-game radio show, is what I heard. I mean, you know what? You don't have a choice. You need to own up. You're bringing in all this talent. You're getting paid more than any basketball coach in America in college. And you can't do your post-game show. The more we pay these coaches, the bigger jerks a lot of them become. Sidelines, here with you, man. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. And hit that orange Patreon button at the top of the sidelines.live website. Join IPTAM. I pay $10 a month to help us grow the show. That's what we are doing. And that's happening because we're very fortunate to have a lot of listeners. We're here Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, talk about college football, basketball, baseball. Let me just say this. Free speech is alive and well. Gary Harris joins us in the second segment from Tide 100.9 WVUA TV 23. Looking forward to hearing his thoughts about that Iron Bowl on the hardwood last night. Top of hour number 2. Matt Dean checks in with us. The AP angle. Hoping John Hartwell can join us as well. Bottom line, Billy, watch a lot of basketball. You get up by 17 on the road, you got to shoot better. You get 9 3-pointers or 10, whatever. You shouldn't lose a game like that. The guard play of Auburn could be better. Alabama, really good team. But they're down by 17 on their home court. They came back and won. Are they a number 1 seed? Or Houston's the number 1 seed? UCLA, Kansas, Purdue? I don't know. But that was a tough one last night for Auburn. I think Bruce Pearl is about to lose his mind at some of the lack of officiating. But I've heard it said there ought to be a total cleansing in the SEC. That was tough. I still can't figure that one out. Janai Broome for Auburn, 6.5 minutes left, goes up for a rebound, is thrown to the ground, and then the Alabama player throws the ball at him when he's on the ground, and no technical.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody cares anymore.
The SEC, it always seems like the refs have a hidden hand in the outcome of games. Sometimes, they protect their high seeds in football. They protect their high rankings. I mean,
sure they do.
Yeah. And I think they try to equalize the fouls, to give everybody an equal number of free throw shots. But That was a ridiculous end where 3 Auburn guys all fouled out before the end of regulation. Then it goes into overtime, and they run out of gas predictably. I mean, it's hard to win on the road. Flanagan fouling out didn't help. I mean, if he doesn't, they probably win the game. That guy's a really good player. So it stinks.
Yeah, and bottom line is you've got to take care of business during the regulation, but the officiating, there's just cases where it's so god awful. And last night was as bad as I've seen. But you have to credit Alabama for coming back. But when your bench clears and guys are running down the court, I mean, this is just it makes you not it makes your head spin. It makes you wonder who's behind the curtain.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I remember watching the Final Four a couple years ago, Auburn and Virginia in the semifinal game. I've got a good friend that his son goes to Virginia, and he watched that game with great interest. And there was a non-call on a double dribble that kept Auburn out of the playing for the championship. They got knocked out by Virginia on a non-call. Otherwise, a really good game, well played on both sides. And but that was ridiculous end to a good game, and then Virginia goes on to win it all. And so sometimes it's not a bad call; it's a non-call by the refs. And like you said, how do you throw a ball at a guy while he's down, and then the ref doesn't call a technical on that? That guy shouldn't have come back in the game.
Well, yeah, and they did eject the 2 guys that came off the bench. And a coach.
But they're on the bench for a reason. They're not starters, right?
Yeah. No, but they ran down the court. I mean,
grab your 9 and 10 guy on the depth chart and kick them out as a token, right?
Yeah. You can't have. I'm telling you, officiating, it just makes fans not take it seriously. That's tough. And look, like the call that the Chiefs had to have at the end of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They hadn't been calling. Everybody was talking about that NFL veterans, observers, they hadn't been calling, pass interference like that, just that incidental all night long. By God, they called it when it mattered. And I don't know if it necessarily made Kansas City win, but it sure made it a lot easier, But
it marred a good game. I mean, Super Bowls are usually pretty dull affairs. Every once in a while you get a well contested game, but that was an all timer. That was a hell of a game to see it end. With a suspect officiating. With 80 million people watching or whatever their audience is, with 150 cameras on the field. How do they not go and replay that over and over? I mean, is that call reviewable? I guess it's not, is it?
I don't know.
I don't think calls like that are reviewable. So maybe once it's called on the field, that's it. I don't think they're going to change their mind because that undermines the ref if his call can be reviewed and undermined.
Well, the bottom line, we get everything else is reviewed, but they spent forever trying to sort out what happened, and then the Alabama player goes to the line to shoot free throws.
Yeah.
And Janai Browne is called for the foul when he's thrown to the floor, and then the guy throws the ball at him.
Right.
I mean, somebody, and I'm pretty damn smart, and I was born in the afternoon, but not this afternoon.
But the thing is, the SEC office, they're very savvy about how do we get the most teams, in the tournament. And even in football, how do we protect, like I said, how do we protect the high rankings? They'll never admit to it, but they certainly seem to be able to kind of steer the outcome in the way that they wanted to. They don't really love upsets. They're going to protect the number 1 and 2 seeds if they can, and they kind of take their chances with the teams that have demonstrated excellence all year. But they don't really appreciate upsets unless it's an inconsequential game, and maybe the Vandy Kentucky game wasn't for all the marbles, so they let
it happen. They allowed
that happen.
They allowed it to happen. I mean, I don't normally comment on officiating unless it's third world bad, and that was third world bad. A number of cases like that. That's just frustrating. And then you look at LSU, they can't hold serve. up big at home against Missouri and lose by, I don't know, 4 or 5. In Kentucky, Vanderbilt, in Lexington, the longer John Calipari stays at Kentucky, the more, they're going backwards. He's getting paid all this money. I mean, when are athletic directors? And I know we're going to hear, well, if you don't do it, someone else will get him. Some athletic director out there has to have the backbone, the spine, a pair of them, to call the bluff on his coach or multiple coaches who are threatening to go somewhere else. That's what I call the Sextonization of college sports. Jimmy Sexton is a great agent. He's great for his clients. But for college football, basketball, baseball, whatever, mainly college football and basketball. And he has most of the SEC coaches as clients. He's got them, bent over a barrel. What are they going to do? Somebody just go, hey, look, leave, go take that money. I'll tell you what, I'm proud of Florida. Florida did it with Jaden Rashada, that quarterback out of Pittsburgh, California, a 4-star whose handlers were looking for a $13 million NIL deal at Florida. Billy Napier found out about that and was like, y'all are out over your skis, as Buddy Martin referred to it. And said, we're not doing that. They gave that kid a month to go find a better offer. Washington, Arizona State, Arizona. Nothing ever happened. He came back to Florida. They talked again. See you later. Your national letter of intent is torn up. I think Arizona State is where he signed for $300,000 maybe. I mean, that's what you've got to do. Call people out on the carpet. Expose them. There's just a handful of people getting big NIL deals, but we've got coaches that are getting paid a ton of money. You don't tell me that giving a coach a 50, 60, 70 million, $80 million deal with a buyout, and if he does anything short of, commit murder, it seems like, I mean, how are you going to get rid of? I mean, something horrible. Well, Chris Beard, you saw what happened to him at Texas, and that was, not to do with his team. That was his personal life. He's out of a job. I think we got to be real careful, and it goes in business too, Billy. Overpaying people to where they're not scared and they're not hungry. What do you think they're going to do? Think they're going to be as motivated as they were before they got all that money?
Well, it's people react differently to money. I mean, with somebody like Nick Saban, the money is consequential, inconsequential to a guy like that. He's continued to win multiple championships, even though he was the highest paid coach up until a year ago. I guess Smart's the highest paid now, or they're neck and neck. So, you don't know, like with life-changing money, how it's going to affect somebody's work ethic or not. It's a question whether their work ethic is going to still be intact. But the biggest problem is the buyout that doesn't have is kind of like when you take another job like Malzahn did at Central Florida, that should come out of a buyout. That you shouldn't be able to take a full buyout and then skip down the road and get another job paying you $8 million a year, and you get the double dip in my mind. If the school owes you an $80 million buyout or $21 million buyout, and you 3 months later go get another job for $8 million a year, then the buyout gets reduced by that amount. And that's what you talked about with Sexton as the agent, where he's playing both sides of the street. And heck, he probably represents half the athletic directors in the college football too, not just the head coaches. So sometimes guys, have got their hands in both sides of the pants pockets, and they're manipulating the situation. You could say good agent, tip my hat to him, but there's a natural conflict there. I'll say you can't represent both athletic directors and head coaches, but there's no police to stop that. I mean, the NCAA, there's no governing authority that could tell Jimmy Sexton, you got a conflict of interest. We're not going to allow that. There's no way to stop it.
Billy, here's something interesting. You mentioned about when you leave a school and then go get another job. I've seen a lot of contracts where the buyout or is reduced by they subtract. Like if you've got a $10 million deal to go to another job and you had a $15 million buyout, that helps to reduce the buyout.
Yeah.
There are some contracts that do that. But all that being said, I think that the money and look where we're going in football. The SEC right now gets $55 million a year from CBS. 2023 will be the last football season with that CBS contract. Now, I'm told Disney is going to pay $300 million plus, okay, for the rights to carry SEC football. The Big Ten got a much bigger deal. They're bringing in Southern Cal, they're bringing in UCLA, but the SEC a year earlier announced they were bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. We keep hearing 80 to 100 million for the SEC schools going forward, and it might happen. But this past year, for the 21-22 academic year, which is last year, they got $49.9 million per SEC school. That's a far cry different than 80 to 100 million. Now, getting out over your skis, yes, but look what the Big Ten's doing. Then you compare that grant of rights contract that the ACC has, Billy. It goes up through 2036. And those schools are getting far less than even the SEC is getting.
Yeah.
They got a problem. Let's take a quick commercial break. And we're going to be right back because I don't understand why the ACC can't renegotiate the contract. It happens every day with football coaches. We'll be talking about it after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Billy, you're talking about these TV contracts. Let's use this as an example. The March Madness, that'll generate about $1 billion for the NCAA. And that's where they get almost their entire budget. Remember, college football playoff is separate. It's not part of the NCAA. The NCAA has 91 national championships in men's and women's sports. Number one is the men's basketball tournament, March Madness. You know what the second biggest moneymaker is?
Not women's basketball. Let me think about it for a minute. Yeah. Is that what it is? Okay.
No, College Baseball World Series.
Okay.
Omaha. So, and let me here's a problem I have. Title IX was established in 1972 by Richard Nixon, his administration. You know, you got a daughter, I got two of them. It's not that. That's not the issue. You know, men versus women. Throw that one out the window. Flush out your headgear, people. Don't repeat the stale old stupid garbage. That's not what it is. It's money. The 85 football scholarships should be put on a separate island because that pretty much is what pays for everything else. A handful of women's basketball programs make money. Same thing with baseball programs. Most of these other sports, gymnastics, you win a national championship in gymnastics, traditionally, it's cost you over $1 million in the red. I love gymnastics. Look at these gymnastics meets in the SEC. They're standing room only. 9, 10, 12, 15,000 attendance. But, baseball, the second most profitable national championship of the 91 that the NCAA sponsors. And of the 35 baseball players have to share 11.7 scholarships. Do the math, people. Do your gazendas. 11.7 gazenda, 35. That's about a third of a scholarship for each baseball player.
No.
Yet, they're the second most profitable. How would you like to work for a company in the business world where your division out of 91 divisions was the second most profitable, net profitable in the company, and you didn't profit from it or benefit from it? I'm going to tell you something. Socialism doesn't work in anything. Billy, you work real hard. You get a 4.0 your first semester in college. Your roommate is, Otis the town drunk, gets a 1.0. You get home, and God, Billy, great job, 4.0 in mechanical engineering with a minor in accounting. You're doing great, 4.0. How'd your roommate do? Well, he's the life of the party. Well, how did he do? 1.0. All of a sudden, you get a letter in the mail from wherever you're in college, and they said, look, we took your 4.0 with your roommate's 1.0, combined them, and you both have a C average. How would you feel? I mean, we've got to figure this thing out with baseball, okay? And a lot of times people will say women's softball. We don't have the beer belly, polyester shorts with the skull can in the back, men's softball with tube socks. Let's go yard. We don't have that. We don't have men's softball. Baseball, second most profitable, yet they have to share those scholarships. That's an outrage. Maybe NIL can close the gap, Billy, but would you agree with me that the second most profitable of the 91 national championships, and they have to share basically a third of a scholarship? Now, there are other sports that do, but nothing like baseball, is there?
Well, no, and I mean, I think that precedent was set, prior to the rise of college baseball as a sport that's attracted TV viewing audience. I mean, the thing that you got to know is that TV, governs everything regarding sports. Without the TV revenue, then you don't really know what kind of money there's going to be. So when college baseball wasn't attracting the TV audience that it is today, I mean, the gate, the ticket sales are interesting, but it's probably dwarfed by TV revenue. That's certainly true in college football. They sell out football stadiums all over the place, but it's the TV revenue that calls the shots. That's why you have pretty good games that are yet relegated to a 12 p.m. kickoff, which is a miserable time slot.
11 a.m. for those of us west of you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the part. So, TV rules everything. I think the biggest problem, like you said, we both have daughters, and we want everything to be fair and then them to have a shot.
Of course we do.
Here's the deal. Yeah. If women paid more attention to women's sports, the problem would be solved. That's the issue. Is like, the viewing audience for women's sports on TV is primarily tennis. I think women's golf would be a distant second. Yeah. I've been to pro tennis tournaments, female tournaments, and pro female golf tournaments. And the interesting thing is professional female golf players have a game that most men can relate to. They can hit the ball as far as we can. Yeah. They certainly putt better than guys do. So you could learn a hell of a lot more by going and watching a women's golf tournament in person than going and watching a men's PGA tournament, because those guys are otherworldly. I mean, they're hitting the ball 350 yards. Most amateur men can't do that. Not easy to do. So women, with the distance that they have, is more relatable. So that's why men are watching women's golf, probably to pick up a tip here or there. I used to love watching Annika Sorenstam play. Yes. Right. And back in December, she and her son played in what used to be the father-son tournament down in Orlando. Mm-hmm. And now it's the PNC, kind of family championship. Yeah. But she still has got a hell of a game. Even her 10-year-old son says, yeah, she's pretty good, which was awesome. Greatest women's golfer of all time. Women's tennis has been a TV draw for a long, long time. because, I've played tennis since I was 10. A professional women's match is more relatable to me than watching Federer and Nadal, because I can't serve 140 miles an hour. I can serve about 105, and that's what most pro women can serve. Serena a little harder than that,
Yeah.
but she's the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
But a professional woman plays a game comparable to amateur men, and so they draw eyeballs. And that's why women's tennis players make $20 million a year. There's nobody crying for them. They fill stadiums, and people tune in to watch them on TV. So the lesson there is, men are watching women's tennis, women are watching women's tennis, and that's got to trickle down to other women's sports. That would solve all of the issues. So, not every woman is interested in sports. I get that, but there needs to be more appeal there. And I was sad to see kind of a snarky commentary by the Stanford women's basketball coach. I don't recall her name at the moment, but she was taking a shot at the LSU gymnast that's got $4 million a year in NIL money, and she's got 16 million Instagram.
Olivia Dunn.
Olivia Dunn's a good-looking girl.
Yeah,
and she is an incredible athlete, but it doesn't hurt that she's a good-looking girl. On top of being an incredible athlete. Chris Everett made $100 million applying that same formula, right? Good-looking woman, won a lot of tennis tournaments. She doesn't apologize for it, and it didn't diminish her standing as an athlete. But the Stanford women's basketball coach was griping about, the fact that young men are turning out to watch gymnastics matches. I guess she went to Utah and there was a riot because guys wanted to get in there. They didn't have enough seats. And you couldn't give a ticket away to women's gymnastics not so long ago, but now they're selling it out. Yeah. Women's basketball at Stanford, I'm guessing that, those girls aren't as attractive as Olivia Dunn, and a lot of young guys aren't showing up to watch women's basketball. You can't blame them. What you got to do is say, where are the women that are going to follow women's basketball? That solves the problem. But nobody wants to go there, and I'm probably going to regret saying this out loud, but that's the issue. I mean, there's no mystery to it. It's women generally are kind of interested in sports, but when they do watch sports, they watch men's sports. They'll watch the Super Bowl. They'll watch an NBA game. There's a lot of women at NBA basketball games.
Oh yeah.
The opposite is not true. Women are not watching women's sports, so they've got to figure out a way to solve that problem.
Sounds like a personal problem to me. I mean, it's on them, but you can't have a totalitarian top down, ordering people to do anything. It doesn't work.
Right.
The free market has to work.
That's right.
There's a reason why all those years, Mildred calling the Feinbaum show, we've never seen video evidence, a picture of Mildred. And it's obvious why. Now, I mean, if you're good looking, that's the way it goes. God bless you. God bless you. You know what? It's just the way it is, and life isn't fair. You know what? You just got to work through it. Got to get over it. But I love this SEC network documentary on SEC hoops history, because Pat Summitt was 22 years old. I mean, I've known this before this came out. I mean, I've grown up in Memphis, heard a lot about him, but Pat Summitt came on at 22 as a GA. And shortly after that, 6 months later, she's the head coach. And I mean, Andy Landers, they had to have bake sales to buy equipment. Like, look, let's get moving. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, WVUA. Gary. I'm glad you're not an official.
Yeah, I am too, because it's a tough job, Rob, and
it's horrible.
If coaches and players, and I know if there's a massive mistake, they catch heat, but if coaches and players were graded on every possession or every play in a football game the way officials are, they'd probably find another line of work too. It's a thankless job, and when you have, and it's just gotten worse with social media. And again, I've been critical of officials too, but I can tell you this: those guys, we just take them for granted. And here I'm defending officials right off the bat, but from their, just to find guys that and now ladies that are willing to do it. I'm appreciative of those folks because, we can say what we want, but if we didn't have them, we couldn't play the games. And man, the amount of stress and pressure that they're under is unbelievable. But I know what you're referencing. I know a lot of Auburn fans are very, very unhappy this morning, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, look, here's my take on it. I always say this, and Billy Roberts and I, both went to school together, lives over in Atlanta, and you've got 40 minutes to get the job done, okay? And officials are always going to be a part of it, and we all know that. And I have I don't comment that much on officiating because I'm always worried.
No, you don't.
As a coach, you got to be careful of that because then you're signaling to your players, y'all agree with me, that, well, we can find excuses. You just got to. But I don't know, that game last night, I'll tell you what, it reminded me of the Duke Carolina games. Some of those boxing matches out there, guys with blood all over them and fighting and stuff. In a crazy roundabout sort of way, gentlemen, that's going to do a lot to spark interest in college basketball in the state of Alabama. And here's what you got to say. Auburn, you're up by 17. You got to close that deal. And you have to credit Alabama. What you can't interject. Tony Barnhart was on with us this week, Mr. College Football. He said, too many times today, people that call themselves journalists are interjecting their feelings and their personal opinions over the facts, what's right and wrong. So when we're on the air, hey, y'all don't know I'm an Auburn grad. Billy's an Auburn grad. You're an Alabama grad. We're going to have fun with this stuff. The thing about it is, it's just like people that complain the most, the loudest about a coach or a team. Always, I love to ask this question. How are they doing in their personal life? Are you number one?
Oh, yeah, Rob, I say this all the time. This is an amazing thing about
this
whatever
is good therapy for me, Gary.
Yeah, and I'm the same way, and I'm critical of people. We can always do somebody else's job better than they can. Have you noticed that? But how well do we do our own job? That's the thing. I'm guilty of it, man. I mean, regardless of the vocation, man, it's easy to tell somebody else, oh, I can do that better than them. Or we all do that. And I bet, and I say to myself, though, I bet there's some people sitting there saying, hey, I can do my job better than Gary Harris does his. So it's easy to do somebody else's job. It's easy to officiate when you're not an official. And, one thing I will say, and I get it, man. I mean, when you have a close game, regardless, and one team is going to win and one team's going to lose, and that team that's going to lose winds up losing more times than not. Whatever the calls were that didn't go their way, they're going to, and they're right. I mean, I still look back the Alabama football Tennessee game, and there were some critical calls down the stretch there that when Alabama made plays, that if they go Alabama's way, Alabama wins that game. That's a fact. And probably last night in the basketball game. I mean, I know the Janai Browne play where he got slung out of bounds by Quinterly, and that wound up being a foul call on Broome's a huge call in that game. And you certainly, if you're an Auburn fan, can make the argument that if that call doesn't go against Browne and he doesn't foul out, Auburn wins that game. So, but it's always heightened in rivalry games, right? I mean, that's, nobody wants to see their team lose, but when you're playing a Duke Carolina or an Alabama Auburn or UCLA USC or Michigan State, and I'm thinking more in terms of basketball right now, but you cross it over with football. If it's a close game, the fan base that loses is going to point to officiating more times than not. And then that's even, you even accelerate that, Rob, when then your head coach, and I'm not saying he didn't have a right to be upset, but when your head coach carries on the way that Bruce Pearl carried on the radio after that game, that then the fans feel legitimized in their complaints and in their criticism of the officials. So you get what you get this morning. And, I've seen it, and you have too, in these rivalry games. If it's a close game, the team that comes out on the wrong end, I mean, you go back to that kick six game, you can't find an Alabama fan that will they'll tell you nobody moved a centimeter on that illegal procedure on that field goal, the one field goal that Kate Foster made. And of course they called it an illegal procedure. Then on the next play, it got blocked and there was a personal foul on Alabama, and Auburn, winds up going down to score, or on the play where TJ Yeldon got the first down and OJ Howard was called 15 yards behind the play for a holding. Alabama fans are going to remember that forever, just like Auburn fans are going to remember that basketball game, no matter as time softens things. But Auburn fans, 3 years from now, will say, remember that time in Tuscaloosa, we were, fighting to get in the NCAA tournament. They were number 2 in the nation, and we outplayed them. We should have won the game, except for an official's call. That's just the way. That's sports. That's fan bases. And we all like to think, and something else I think that fans need to remind themselves is we all think of our fan base as our fan base is the best, and our fan base is this, and all fan bases are the same, man. At the end of the day, you love your school, they love their school, and that's the nature of fandom.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this: our daughter Mallory, the Alabama grad, we're blocking her calls this morning. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Hey, Billy Roberts is going to weigh in. Gary Harris, this is
go ahead, Billy.
This is good therapy. We're going to be right back after this quick break.
Okay.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Roberts, like what Gary was saying, I can do anything better than you can. My fan base, our fans never get riled up. You're right. I mean, but you're right about that. Most games come down to 4 or 5 plays, but that's what makes this stuff so dadgum fun is stuff like this. I mean, because it fuels interest, doesn't it, Billy?
It does. And, in my many, many years of watching Iron Bowls, that might have been the only time there was an offensive line holding call on Alabama that I'd ever seen.
There you go.
I fell out of my chair because I'm like, oh, my God, they never get called for
You got to love this stuff.
Just saying that.
Well, here's the thing, Gary. And Billy, I can tell you, having been a reporter on TV, but not as long as Gary and doing a show in Tuscaloosa, he sees things and hears from the fan base there every day. But the smartest group of fans that he talks with, if you want to know what's going on with Alabama, are the interns. What are the interns there at the TV station saying right now? Because this kind of stuff, this gets people excited, and you're right, but you got to keep it fun.
Yeah, the students, that are they're students first. So, they're thrilled Alabama won the game. I just think, again, in rivalry games, everything's amped up. But, I do try to see it. I think everybody has bias. We all do, and I think, though, that people that have been around longer, Rob, like you and I and Billy, where we're at now on social media is in traditional broadcasting or print journalism or whatever it may be, you are able to remove your biases a little bit when you write a story or it's that ability to be objective, even though you're not objective there's a side of you that, wants to see the team that you follow or report on or, grew up liking, whatever, win the game. But you still can remove that bias and have somewhat of an objective opinion. That's what's lost now. And so you get out there on the internet, it's just people yelling at each other, hollering at each other. Here's the deal. Listen, regardless of what team you pull for, I think fans now have their own competition, and because of social media, they get to compete with each other about who's the best. Listen, if you love Auburn, you're not going to love Auburn any less when they lose. All right.
Yeah. You're
not going to love them any more when they win. Same thing with Alabama, Tennessee, or Florida. You love your school. You love your team. That's not going to change. And, unfortunately, both teams can't win. Somebody's going to lose, and we put so much on winning and losing, and I get it. And in close games, as I said, it's even more so. But at the end of the day, if you're an Auburn fan, you played a great game, and you got it. You have a good team. You know, are you going to get in the NCAA tournament? I don't know. Unfortunately, things haven't gone your way. For Alabama this year, much like Auburn had last year. You know, and Alabama may get in the NCAA tournament and not make that run. But Auburn was that team last year. Auburn was, you know, top tier, number one. Alabama was a good team, but they weren't a great team. And this year, the roles are reversed. Next year, it might be the other way around. There might still be a year where neither team is good. There may be another year where both teams are great. And you know, we've seen it in basketball and in football. So it's year to year, it's game to game. But at the, you know, at the end of the day, it's competition. You know, it's a big win for Alabama. They go ahead and clinch the outright SEC championship. I can promise you, Rob and Billy, they didn't want to go to A&M with that game still being able to determine a co-championship. They wanted to win this thing outright. And if Auburn had won last night, I don't think there's any doubt. If Auburn wins that game, we're saying this morning they're an NCAA tournament team. Now, they still have a crack at Tennessee. And if they win against Tennessee at home and can get in the NCAA SEC tournament and win one or two, I still think Auburn can get in. So I don't think all is lost. But, you know, we've seen it in the Iron Bowl a lot, where an underdog just a couple of years ago, sometimes underdog frees you up a little bit and you can just go in there and play. And I thought that's what Auburn had last night. I think, you know, they got embarrassed at Kentucky. I mean, I was able to watch that game and it was brutal. And then, but we see, you know, we saw again last night what basketball is. You know, Kentucky blows out Auburn. Auburn nearly beats Alabama, goes to overtime in Tuscaloosa, and Vanderbilt beats Kentucky in Lexington, right?
On senior day.
Yeah, it's game to game. You know, listen, the distance between being where Alabama is right now, with number 2 in the country, and being where Auburn is right now, not probably maybe on the outside looking in as for the NCAA tournament, it's like that. It's like that. I mean, it's not that the gap between these teams, even the teams that are at the top of the standings and the teams that are in the middle of the standings, is not very large.
Yeah, it's not. Billy, jump in here because Bruce Pearl's right. Auburn's beating the teams they're supposed to beat. Got a couple of surprises like Northwestern and some other wins, Missouri, but they just not closing on these deals. But they're right there. You get some guard play, Auburn could be next year where Alabama is this year.
Well, absolutely. You know, and just in the SEC overall, you know, you were questioning at the top of the show, you know, how good are the teams, you know, because they look like they're beating the crap out of each other. And I recalled earlier in the season, Auburn crushed Georgia by 40-something points and then lost the squeaker at Tennessee. And it looked like their legs were gone. They couldn't shoot. You know, everything was clanking off the rim. And I think there's a lot to be said for that when you get toward the end of the season and you're in conference play. These guys playing a couple of times a week, that takes it out of your legs, and that's where the shooting goes away, you know. And then the game gets sloppy and you foul because you're not as fit as you were 3 nights earlier. So a lot of people are like, well, how in the world can you get, you know, drummed out of Kentucky and look so bad? And then, you know, less than 4 days later, you go up against the number 2 team and you gave them a hell of a run. So it's probably just the fatigue at the end of the year like this. Now,
it's
getting
basketball.
into the tournaments will re-energize them a little. Maybe they need a couple of days off between the regular season and the tournament to catch a breather. These guys are young. They don't need like a week off, you know, but I mean, a couple extra days will probably help. But I think fatigue has got to be acknowledged. That's probably why you see these big disparities and, you know, what looks like teams shouldn't be evenly matched are because one team is a little bit fatigued. And plus also playing with house money, nothing to lose. Auburn goes into that game kind of fearless, knowing that if they could win that might punch their ticket. So they were, you know, their hair was on fire playing that game on the road like that.
It was. And, you know, perception is so different based on the result. I guess that's why I keep talking about the result, because if Wendell Green, I think it was Wendell Green that had the shot at the end of regulation that would have won it for Auburn?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
If that shot goes in, Auburn wouldn't have played any harder. They wouldn't have played with any more effort. Alabama wouldn't have played with any more effort, but the conversation this morning would be completely different, because Auburn would have won the game, and it would be Alabama fans that were, suffering with angst and what happened. Sometimes both teams played their guts out. Both teams made mistakes, but at the end of the day, last night, the difference in the game was, that one shot. If that shot goes in at regulation, Auburn wins the game, and everything's different. So, sometimes it's just, again, it just comes down to one team's going to win and one team's going to lose. But I didn't think either team could have played any harder. As you said, it was a physical game. Both teams laid it on the line. Give Auburn credit for coming into a hostile environment on the road after they lost to Alabama at home and building a 17-point lead in the second half. And then give Alabama credit, for going on a 16-0 run and doing what it took to get in the game and get it into overtime and win the game. I just think both teams played hard. Both teams deserve credit. One team won, one team lost. And oftentimes, as you guys know, when you're having a special season like Alabama is having, you make the plays to win those games. And when things have gone against you some, the way they have for Auburn, you don't make those plays. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. One thing on Alabama, too, like Billy was talking about with fatigue, with what Alabama has dealt with here in the last few weeks, Billy was talking about fatigue taking a toll on Auburn. I feel like this has impacted Alabama. There's the situation with the shooting and Darius Miles being in jail and Brandon Miller's name being attached. I mean, you look at their last 3 games. I mean, this was an Alabama team, particularly at home. They weren't just beating people; they were annihilating people. And they once the incident happened, they continued to play well. But after that hearing and all that flew up with Brandon Miller and even Jalen Bradley, they went to South Carolina and had to win that game in overtime, Rob and Billy, against a team that they're clearly better than. And then against Arkansas, they, much like the Auburn game, they fell behind big in the first half, fought back, had a 12-point lead with under 3 to go, and then hung on to dear life to win that game. And then last night, they win in overtime. So the last 3 games against teams that Alabama is better than. They're a better basketball team than South Carolina, Auburn, and Arkansas. But they could have lost. They could have lost all 3 of those games.
They could.
You know what I mean? But they didn't. Right.
That's right. And I think too, I use this term a lot. It's not my term. It's a term I learned. But you got to find excuses to win. And there's times when you're playing against a team like why? I mean, we're so much better than them, but you still have to play the game. And what I was impressed with. Look. Billy is a serious 4.0, 4.5 tennis player. We all have our sports. I'm competitive. I want to be the first one out of bed in the morning every day.
Well, good. I'm going to go ahead and let you beat me on that one. All right.
Yeah. But the competition, and you saw Pearl and Oates after the game talking, they understand how intense and it is. But what would you rather have the night of, the morning after your in-state rivalry? Apathy or emotions? I mean, that's what fuels interest. But there weren't any fists thrown, any fights. You look at some of those Big Ten brawls you have up there. We don't do that stuff in the SEC. I mean, think about it. I think, look, the passion of the fans is incredible. But our job on the air, Billy, you do a show and you're on TV, Gary. My job, Tony Barnhart's right. It's not really to inject our opinion on everything. It's to gather the facts and get people from both sides and let them talk about it. I've already calmed down a lot. I can tell you from talking to you, Gary.
Well, and also think about this. I mean, Bruce Pearl is speaking to his team, not necessarily the fan base, but to his team through the media. So when he's ranting and raving, the subliminal message and probably what he says in the locker room is, you guys, are just as good as them. They're number 2 in the country, but you guys came within a whisker. If only a bad call here or there, because he's trying to stoke self-belief in the team. Because he wants them to go into the tournament on a roll and momentum-wise, and like, look, you lost the game, but you didn't lose it. The ref stole it from you. That's a little bit of coaching theater right there.
I don't have any problem with coaches being coaches. So I'll tell you that right now, Billy. He's
trying to get his team to buy
Yeah,
in
the fact
and
that
believe in themselves.
the fact now that we want coaches to be politically correct, I don't have an issue with it. I just said when your coach does that though on the radio, it's gonna heighten your fans' criticism.
Well,
That's all I'm
that's
saying.
the unintended consequence,
Yeah,
right?
but
Because
I
the
don't
fans
listen.
are the players are gonna keep it under control.
I don't have any problem with coaches being coaches, man. And and coaches, it's even the Kirby Smart locker room speech before the national championship game. It shouldn't have gotten out, but that's coaching. That's and that was in a locker room situation, but even on the radio, like Bruce Pearl was, as you said, I mean, plus emotions are running high. I mean, you can't expect these guys all the time after a game like that to just be able to, flip a switch. And we honesty in this day and age is not always appreciated. With Bruce Pearl last night, I say this about Nate Oates, the same thing, and I got to go in a minute. But, Nate Oates is one of those guys, you ask him a question, you're going to get an answer. He's a little rough around the edges. And sometimes in this world that we live in now, when he answers a question honestly, it gets him in trouble. And he has been dealing with, he's been piled on. I mean, there's some of these national writers now they're drilling this guy because of some things that he said, and he could have been more politically correct. But I think one final thing on what Billy's talking about, what coaches saying, what they're saying that day, that Tuesday press conference before the South Carolina game, when that preliminary hearing was going on. And we said this last week, Rob, somebody from Alabama should have maybe have protected him more. He came in out of Nebraska. He was asked a question about Brandon Miller. And I just think he said, hey, listen, Brandon Miller, we never had any trouble with Brandon Miller, and Brandon Miller's in trouble now. He didn't mean that to be to be insensitive to anybody. He just answered the question, much like Billy's talking about Bruce Pearl last night. He's on the radio. It's an emotional game. Auburn could have won it. Some calls didn't go their way, and and he said what he said, but we are now just. We feel like coaches need to always say the right thing and say what's politically correct. And sometimes they don't, and that's okay. And
that's
listen,
right.
I got to go.
Well, funny enough, and I'll add on what you're saying. I've got
let me let Gary sign off real quick because he's got to go.
Well, let Billy make his point, and then I'll go.
Okay. Yeah, I got 10 seconds. So I've got a friend from up north that was amused when Tuberville was running for Senate. And he's like, my goodness, a football coach, what's he going to do when he deals with all of these, media members that are just going to eat him alive? I'm like, that guy has been a coach in the SEC for a long time.
He can handle
He's more prepared to deal with the hostile media and hostile fan bases than anything you can ever imagine. I said, actually, being a college coach is a great training ground to being a politician on the national level.
Sure There's no pressure
thanks,
being
guys.
a coach at Auburn. Thank you, Gary.
All righty.
That is Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 WVUA. Tuscaloosa, Channel 23, does a great show Tuesday nights at 6:30 p.m. Central with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. And Gary's a great guy. I talk to him a lot. Look, he knows it. We all know it. We are fans, but we're on the air. You know what? Yeah, Tony Barnhart's right. Bo Carter's right. Ken Capps is right. The True Grit journalist, Buddy Martin, Franz Beard. These guys are right. We got to be careful. And you're a graduate of whatever school, you get emotional. What's that commercial about the deal? Like, I'm hangry, until they have their snack or whatever.
Snicker bar.
You know how I am when I don't eat. My mother's like, you're not fit to be around. What we say about other schools during an actual game cannot be used against us because what we say, because then after the game, I've always had this theory. After a loss, go shake hands with as many of the opposing team's fans as you can. It kind of calms you down.
It does.
And I also remember.
Well, and Rob, let's go back to the
right
Ohio State-Georgia semifinal game for football just a couple months ago, right? I went to a party that had a handful of Ohio State people and a lot of Georgia people in the game. At the party watching the game. We all were watching it together. And it was interesting for me as a non-combatant. I had no rooting interest in either to be there at watching the people lose their mind, particularly as it got down to the end of the ball game. Some of the Georgia fans were incredibly gracious, saying Ohio State probably should have won that ball game. There was a call there or two at the end. That didn't work for Ohio State, but it was a classic game. If you looked at it objectively as I did, but I didn't have the passion of a fan of being either Georgia or an Ohio State fan. So I was being objective about it, and it said, that's just a good ball game. But both sides were losing their mind over calls that didn't go their way, and circumstances. So it gets back to your point. If you want to win the game, you had 60 minutes to win it.
That's right. Billy, we're about to take a break, but look, I love having you on here. We'll do it again here next couple of days. This is the stuff. You're exactly right. Like, how exciting was it when McEnroe and Jimmy Connors were playing tennis compared to Pete Sampras? Pete was like stoic, almost robotic. He's a winner, but you love passion. I'm Scotch Irish. That's probably why. We'll be right back with more Sidelines, hour number 2.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with Matt Dean in the right corner, a 6'3", 207-pound sophomore from Ocelot, Iowa, home of national bowling champion. I believe that was the home of the world champion bowler, Roy Munson. Wasn't he from Ocelot, Iowa?
He could have been, Rob.
Yeah, he was.
I am 6'3".
Don't deny it.
I am 6'3", but man, it's been a while since I've been 207, brother. But I appreciate the compliment.
You're solid rock, man. By the way, March 25th will be the wild game deal. We had to move the date up because of Rites of Spring at Rhodes College.
It's early this year. Rites has moved up, so yeah, I got it.
So Warren A. Bud Ritchie and Pierre Landash and George Ryan Connor and several other folks from Rhodes, we're going to be cooking up anything, 4 categories. Anything that ever ran, flew, swam, or crawled. We're doing a pastelaya, a gumbo, jambalaya, duck tenders, where we're going to marinate them in half and half cream and Allegro spicy Cajun marinade for 24 hours. Wrap them in Wright's thick slab country bacon, and then use a marinade of 1/3 real butter, 1/3 honey, and 1/3 orange soda, and just marinate it while it's on the grill. We're going to be doing other duck poppers with jalapeno peppers in them. We're going to be doing venison sliders. It's going to be incredible, and I'm excited about you being there on your meat eater carnivore diet. It's going to be, and we'll, by the way, we will have on NCAA college basketball on the color TV over there at Sigma Newhouse at beautiful Rhodes College. Stop by Alex's. It was Tuesday night on the way back out of Memphis. Stopped by Alex's and got a couple of burgers. Every time I go by there, I think about this. How many times did Matt Dean have a pregame planning session with his staff at Alex's Tavern? 100 times? Or maybe never. Maybe you had a special play, but I guarantee you've been to Alex's before.
Hey, Rob, one of the first jobs I had on the, at a place like Rhodes, you can wear multiple hats, right? So
yes,
I was the rugby club advisor, like when I was first or second year on the job, and
yeah,
they had played a match and went over to Alex's, and they're doing the thing out of the boot and all that stuff, and had one of those best burgers I've had, man. It's right up there with anything, and the food there is incredible. It's just right down the street from campus. Now then I realized as employee of the athletic department, seeing how many of our student athletes are in there, I probably could not frequent there as much as I'd like. But no, man, you're 100% correct. And man, I put on 3 pounds just hearing the menu for March 25th, brother. I mean, that is fantastic. And we're going to have some athletic events that day. I don't have the calendar in front of me, so I'll definitely pop over, and maybe you can pop over and watch some of the teams play as well. And it'd be
we're going to have a track meet or some lacrosse. It looked like they had the
lacrosse.
lacrosse.
We got a track meet for sure.
Yeah.
And I think our lacrosse team, one of our lacrosse teams are in town. I think baseball may be on the road that weekend. I'm not for sure, but go ahead.
Cleanthes, Jim Cleanthes.
Jim Cleanthes, he's my guy. He's all-time winningest baseball coach in Rhodes history. He got his 500th win last year.
Yeah, Bud Ritchie said you need to talk to him sometime because look, sports on
any
level.
Show anytime you want me to get him on the show. He's a baseball aficionado. I'm just telling you.
Well, who's your team? Cubs.
I'm a Chicago White Sox guy.
Okay.
And I can tell you anything you want upside and down, inside out about the White Sox. Last year was a disappointing year, finished 81. After winning the Central title 2 years ago, moved on from Tony La Russa, which was he's a Hall of Famer, but bringing him back when there were other options 2 years ago kind of really alienated the fan base a little bit. But now they hired Pedro Grifol from the Royals system. We're excited. Everybody's excited. Everybody's 0-0,
Oh, yeah. Well, Frank Duffy has got that job right now. He was on with us yesterday before he's in Lakeland, Florida, doing 16 Detroit Tigers home games in the Grapefruit League.
Wow.
Out there down in Florida. And he gets to do, I think he has 8 people working up there with him, but as the PA announcer. And hey, look, baseball, there's not a better sport to attend in person. Pat Cornelius, one of our listeners over in Atlanta, proud native son of Thomasville, Alabama, down in South Alabama. But he is a baseball fanatic, a connoisseur. His older brother, Reed, is one of the pitching coaches for the Colorado Rockies. And my son's out there, my middle son, has been out there a bunch out west and did many, many times. He had several friends that went to school out there and became a big, Colorado Rockies fan. And I love baseball. We're getting college baseball is getting cranked up right now. College basketball is getting to be pretty
intense. It's hot, brother.
Break it down for us as a coach. Got a question from, oh my goodness, who is this one? Yep, here it is. Two of our favorite listeners from the Heritage Club in downtown Philadelphia, PA, Randolph and Mortimer Duke. And they asked this question. They said, ask the coach, Matt Dean, how teams like LSU up big at home and Auburn up by 17 on the road can lose those games. What's going through their minds at that point that allowed them to lose the game? Albeit, got to give credit to the other teams for fighting back. That from Randolph and Mortimer Duke. $1. Pay up, gentlemen.
The greatest bet of all time, right? So let's address it, Missouri LSU last night, because I've raised a couple Tennessee Vol fans, so Tennessee was pulling for Missouri to lose, right? But LSU is 2-14 going in last night in the SEC. So you are who you are. And sometimes at home, you make some shots, the crowd's supporting you, you get in a good rhythm. But over 40 minutes of basketball, you are who you are. And that's what happened. Missouri didn't panic. They came out, had a really good first 2 minutes of the second half and cut that lead. And then once it got to a manageable situation, 2 or 3 possessions, he just knew over time it was going to happen. Hey, I'm going to tell you something. Auburn, I don't care if it was a loss last night. In my mind, it was a win. I saw a team that deserves to be in the NCAA tournament. I saw a team that looked like a second weekend team last night. I saw a team that got a couple unfavorable calls that could have helped them. They got the talent. I think they'll beat Tennessee in the final SEC game. They'll get them to 20, I think. I think they'll win at least one SEC tournament game. I think they're in. Last night showed me that they play they win the country. This is the type of year, listen, you just want to get in. Anybody can make a run to get to the Final Four within reason. I'm just telling you that. There's no – Rob, we've been saying this for weeks. There's no dominant team. Even Kansas Even Kansas was struggling on their home court to beat Texas Tech the other night, who's got 5-11 in the Big 12, which is the toughest league in the nation. We understand that. But my Iowa Hawkeyes went into Indiana and just beat the tar out of those Hoosiers, 90-68. And then the week prior, they lost 2 games on the road to Northwestern and Wisconsin. So, and then they also came back from down 11 in the last minute against Michigan State, hit 5 threes. Yeah. So I think we're going to have fun. It's going to be a great tournament. Brackets are going to be just flying everywhere when people are upset because the team they thought was going to win may not win. Right now, if you had to hold it to me, I still really like Houston because they guard. I really like Kansas because Bill Self's their coach. I've told you for weeks I love UCLA and Arizona, but we don't see them play. And Alabama won the regular season SEC last night, I believe. They're very talented, but all the stuff that's gone on their program, they are intriguing. I think they're very capable of getting to the Final Four. But they're capable of also having happened what happened last night, a game they probably should have lost.
Yeah. Well, that's the second time in the last 3 years Alabama's won the regular season SEC basketball championship. Last year, Auburn won it.
That's right.
And now let's go up a little bit north. Joe Dean, favorite son of LSU, legendary broadcaster on SEC basketball. Lexington KY, a little string music. Tell me this. Wow. Senior day, senior night in Lexington KY. And that's unusual to see a lot of seniors on the sidelines before the Kentucky game.
Yeah, it is.
They sang My Old Kentucky Home. And they get beat by Vanderbilt. And we've been talking about the ascension of Vanderbilt basketball under Jerry Stackhouse, man. Tommy Kane, Wolfpack. Oh, he is a regular on this show, was on a couple of days ago. Talked about a story where they thought they had him coming to NC State. Stackhouse ended up, of course, signing with North Carolina.
Right.
Remember him at the Grizzlies? Goes to Nashville, building. He was very emotional, as he should have been, after that game last night. Kentucky, Vanderbilt. There's this list of teams we hadn't beaten yet in the conference since you've been here. I think Kentucky was the last team on that list. They did it. Vanderbilt's got 10 conference wins.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you know what's most disappointing is, and I like John Calipari. I love what he did at Memphis. I don't like, that's not a good look. Why did he not do his post-game show? You get mad. Not that Bruce Pearl wasn't a little emotional after the game.
Maybe Bruce should have done his post-game show.
Yeah, every other word was like, beep, beep, beep.
But he was just, I think he said we got smashed down there. There was no call.
Yeah, he goes, joke.
Rob, and it's hard for me here because I always was able to, and I've had some tremendous wins as a head coach. I've had some crushing losses. I'll never forget losing a chance to go to the Sweet 16 and going in that locker room and facing my team after a really tough loss, and they just played way above their level and deserved a better fate. But, man, come on. He's making, $9 million a year? Is that the right number? It gets old because what happens is when you do things like that, it becomes about you and not your team. And I'm not saying that was his intention, but, man, go give the interview. Be gracious. Let me tell you what, if I'm a Vanderbilt fan, it's just a great day because what you did last night, beating Kentucky at Rupp, senior day, 10 conference wins. Like you said, Stackhouse has been building. Vandy's got to be in the conversation for something. Now they also beat Tennessee a couple weeks ago. You know,
a buzzer beater.
I know. I agree with you. I just thought, come on, man. You finish the interview, make it short. You don't have to talk for 20 minutes, Cal, like you won by 20. Make it short.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. Hey, David Schultz Cast down in Mobile is on with us right now. Dave, this is Matt Dean up here over at Rhodes. Been coached women's basketball 16 years, associate AD at Rhodes now. Big Ten. He's got a son on the football staff up at Oregon. previous 4 years was with
Wow.
Jimbo at A&M. Loves sports. He's in Memphis. I'll tell you what, Schultz right here, this guy has more energy. He's high speed, but we're going to get you to weigh in on this college basketball, what we saw last night in the SEC.
Yeah.
You get these big leads, LSU, big lead, Auburn, you don't win. Can't wait to get John Brady on the coach tomorrow morning. He's the color analyst on the LSU network, but SEC basketball is either we're cannibalizing each other or we're the second best league in the country behind the Big 12. Dave, your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things. Even my nephew, when Alabama had taken the lead, by a couple of buckets, my nephew was like, "What are they doing?" I mean, didn't they watch the Iowa-Michigan State game? This game's not over until it's over. Yeah. I had some people texting me, some Auburn fans texting me, and I mean, we're not believing what we're seeing. And I was like, maybe we need to dial it down a little bit. There's like 12 minutes left to go, and Auburn's in all kinds of foul trouble. Alabama hasn't played very well, and they're not down by 30, and you only need what they did, right? And it was still like a 15-point game with like 9 minutes to go, and then boom, it went to 8 like that. And then we had the little tussle, and then Alabama took over. I'm not one of those guys that complains about the refs. I'm really not. It seemed like the fouls that were getting called on Auburn when Alabama would initiate the contact, not exactly the same way. That doesn't excuse blowing a 17-point lead. So it was a lot of fun game to watch. Certainly Auburn had a chance at the end of regulation. I'm still trying to figure out a couple of those foul calls, and Quinterly grabbed the rebound, and Broome had his hand in there, and they called the foul on Broome. No big deal, but Quinterly makes 1 or 2, and it was tied at the end of regulation. So things like that can make a difference. I think we've seen, even in the, pros are prevalent too, but someone just blew the Mavericks of all teams blew like a 27-point lead. Yeah. So these things happen, especially with a 3-point line. I still can't believe that Iowa-Michigan State game from the weekend. That was ridiculous. I actually changed the channel. It was 11 points with 2 minutes to go, and Iowa got called for a technical. I changed the channel, went to the other game. My college roommate, one kid goes to Iowa, another kid goes to Kansas. He was actually in Fog Allen 2 nights ago for that ball game. But I'd given up on Iowa, Michigan State, and moved on. So they're a lot of fun to watch. And, this is going to be a great NCAA tournament if somehow, Alabama can stop putting, their foot in their mouth.
Yeah, I want to throw this one in here. Thinking about the way games are perceived by the fans and all. Johnny Most, legendary basketball play-by-play guy for the Boston Celtics. I'll never forget reading a story one time, and he had that gravelly voice that, just like Pharrell. He said one time Larry Bird, the Celtics and the Lakers were playing, and Bird, I think Bird's elbow hit a Lakers player in the eye, and Most said, "Hey, he rammed his eye into Bird's elbow. What's going on here?" I mean, it was strange last night. But right. Matt, you're very calm as a coach. And Pearl got a little excited. I'm surprised Oates. Most of these coaches now are wearing the good fellow attire, warm up suit. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? But what's the limit on how emotional you would get in a game before? Because my wife says once you start screaming and hollering, that just signals to your kids and everybody around you, you've lost control.
Well, Dave pointed out too, there were so many factors with the big lead, and then it jumps from like Dave said, 15-8. So that kind of rattles your cage as a coach. Then you get down and you think there was obviously in your mind there was a foul that was not called, but you can't get a technical foul there, you lose the game. So you have to be composed. I thought he was. If you saw the play in overtime where I'm not sure which guard, they were down 3. They decided not to try to tie it with a 3. They go to the basket. I thought there was some contact at the rim, maybe 10-ish seconds left, so they could have maybe cut it to 1.
Right.
It was a no call. And then I saw I saw Pearl about halfway on the court. I thought at that point he knew the game was over because they're going to foul and extend the lead, and I thought he was going to get the tee then. And they didn't.
Matt,
they didn't get
hold those thoughts. Hold those thoughts. We're going to take a break. Come back, finish it. John Hartwell is going to join us on this round table Thursday right after this. Hey, Rob Browne back here with you. And man, Matt, continue. You were making some great strides. It's almost like, therapy session here with emotional fans, coaches, and everybody. But God, this creates a lot of interest in basketball. I will say that. Whether your team won or lost, it's got you off the couch, standing up in the fighting stance. But Matt, let's go.
Well, I was a head coach for 16 years. I obviously was an assistant for a decade, and I got 2 technical fouls in my whole career, okay? And both of them were strategically planned. One was in a game where they said we fouled a player on a three-point shot. We were down 20. I didn't care at that point, so I was going to let the official know what I thought, right or wrong, okay? But going back to the point about the Auburn game, Bruce was obviously upset, but the call at the end of regulation, you can't afford to let your emotions get the best of you, which you did a good job of. And I thought when they didn't get the call, when it was a 3-point game with 10, 15 seconds to go, the young man's driving to the basket, at that point when the rebound was secured by Alabama, I thought Bruce kind of moved on the court. I thought he was going to get one there, but I think the official said, heck with you, I'm not going to give it to you and piss you off more. You know what I'm saying? So it's such a game out there too, guys. I mean, there's so many personalities. And there's big-time personalities in college officiating as well. Especially
so Matt, there was also a time, I guess Auburn, either a tie game or maybe made a one-possession game. Did you just put Tabasco in something? What was that?
That was a little strawberry crush mix. I apologize.
Oh, okay. All right. And so Pearl was out by half court, yelling defense, whatever he wanted him to do. And one of the referees were like, Coach, you got to get back in the box, right? Not even telling him, just kind of, the ref is in front of the coach. And he's like, get back, Coach, so the referees tried to do their best with, kind of controlling the emotions of the game. And they may have even overdid it with, we're taking 10 minutes to make sure we get it right. With the ejections, because they sort of brought the boil down to a simmer.
We got John Hartwell over here on the runaway mine train at Six Flags. You gotta love Dave Schultz is on here right now. Fellow Mobilian, Matt Dean, Rob Browne, John Hartwell, fellow Mobilian from UMS. John, you're an athletic director at ULM.
Casual Thursday there at ULM.
Yeah, Lord, no, I'm on the Panhandle, David. Come on now, I'm at Sunbelt tournament time.
I will see you there soon. This guy's holding me up. I'll be there shortly.
Nice.
Hey, you're in LA, as LA as they used to say at Auburn, Lower Alabama.
Oh yeah. Hey, you guys. You guys talking about that Auburn, Alabama game. Yeah, there was, I didn't tune it in until about 2 minutes left in regulation. And, we talked a couple of weeks ago about officiating. And the thing that really frustrates coaches, and I'll say athletic directors for that matter, is, and I had this conversation with Cliff Ellis Tuesday at the arena. And, you let guys play, and then all of a sudden things get a little bit chippy, and then you breathe on somebody the wrong way and you call a foul. Now, I will say, without a dog in the hunt in the game, when Auburn drove the lane there, that play you're talking about with about 15 seconds left, there was a heck of a lot of contact there to not call anything. And that's where, consistency in anything you do is key. But in officiating, if you're letting guys play and battle in the lane and letting things go, and then all of a sudden you get really tight with it, which they appeared to do there for a couple of minutes, but then you revert back again and no blood, no foul, it's just really tough for coaches to maintain. And I think, in a lot of cases, when somebody gets teed up, because then I flipped over from the Auburn, Alabama game and watched a little bit of Texas and TCU, and Rodney Terry gets teed up. I'm not sure if he said, the magic word, which a lot of times officials will let you get away with anything. But if you say the fire truck word, that's an instant tee. And I don't know if in his comments about a call or not call, that was in there. But he got teed up for seemingly nothing. And as you guys said, Bruce Pearl, and rightfully so, in some cases, went nuts without getting teed up there towards the end of the game.
So I don't know about this. This is what I'm for a couple of games, and maybe it's just the way South Alabama plays. They're playing ball games in an hour and a half. All right, the game would be over at 8:30 because no fouls were called. Like at one time, the half was like 4 fouls, right? And then you look up and there's 10 minutes left to go in the second half. There's been another 4 fouls called. And I don't know if these referees got to go somewhere or not. And it's not like it's not being called consistently. It was being called consistently. They just weren't calling anything. And then all of a sudden, John, in those games on Tuesday, everything was being called. I mean, we had 47 fouls in that second ball game. It took forever. I know some fouls at the end of the game, but they were calling fouls on a little ticky-tack stuff. And I don't know if it's because, travel in the Sun Belt is really hard for the officials, and now they're not going anywhere during the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. They're sticking around, so doesn't matter how long those games are. But they were really not calling anything. And then even there was one game, it was South Alabama and Texas State. And I even talked to Richie Riley about it, South Alabama head coach. He's like, Coach, that was physical. I said, that was physical. They weren't calling anything on either team. Like, you go in there for a rebound, contact, high, low, whatever. They weren't calling anything. And it was interesting on how that changed, and we'll see how it goes for the Sun Belt Conference Tournament for the rest of the week. But the first 2 games, it felt like a lot of ticky-tack stuff was being called.
Matt, hey, David, I won't throw anybody under the bus here.
I will.
But, in athletic director talk, oftentimes when play is allowed to go on and very few fouls called, we often allude to that as that the officials calling the game probably have a flight to catch, and they don't want it to be a slow game.
Right. As long as you're even, right? If you're not calling it on both teams, then no one really can complain.
Yeah. Matt, like what they're both saying, as a coach, strategically timed technicals in a game, your team is watching everything that you do. Yeah. I like that strategy. Last night, I was, in all these games, the scrutiny is unbelievable. What are you saying when you're up in the coach's ear? Can't we all get along, in the words of a famous LA motorist? Or what are you saying?
Well, it's funny. Dave was referring to the official telling Bruce to get back in the box. And I can tell you many stories when I'm coaching against someone that may not be a person I go out to lunch with. And I would get the ear of the official. I say, can you keep him in the box? I mean, really? I mean, I'm doing my part. Can you keep his ass in the box? Sorry for the language. But, the reality of the situation is you're always trying to get an edge. And here's another thing. You can't harp at every call. You got to be able to pick and choose your points. And when you see coaches that harp at every call, they tune you out. And for me, I only spoke when I really thought, hey, I needed to get a point across. And I thought they listened more than ever, to be honest with you. But yeah, I remember the NCAA tournament. We were down 16 early second half with a chance to go to Sweet 16. I had my 2 stars with 4 fouls on me. I had my point guard get an elbow off the ball that was not called. I was mad. And I got one, and you know what? We ended up cutting the thing to 2, had a chance to win at the end. But you got to pick and choose your spots in those situations. And obviously late in the game, Bruce is not going to get one there.
Speaking of counting, I just wanted to tell you all this. I just got this from MJ, Michael Jordan. It's when you realize the last day of 2023 on the calendar will be a 1, a 2, a 3, a 1, a 2, a 3. That's the count. Remember count from Sesame Street? That's pretty amazing. I just thought I'd throw that in. Real quick to you, Dave.
Did you take extra Benadryl this morning, Rob? What's going on?
I'm eating some, lozenges, cough lozenges. Let me ask you this, Dave. I know you got to go right now, Dave. But these cough lozenges will get you jacked up. Plus, I got to do the live auction tonight for the Arkansas Waterfowl Hall of Fame up in Jonesboro. Audrey and I got to be up there. Our friend Gail Camp, 97 years old, brought the house down at the Rich and Tone Duck Call factory in Stuttgart back in late January at 97. She got 5 standing ovations in the tap room. she still can blow a duck call, still duck hunts at 97. So, yeah,
There's a foul Hall of Fame. Hold on a second. There's a foul
Waterfowl.
Hall of Fame?
Waterfowl, the duck hunting Hall of Fame. And she's 97 and still hunting. You know what an optimist is? Someone her age that buys a puppy. I love it. So, Dave, I know you got to go here in a second. John Hartwell and Matt Dean are going to stay on with us. Tell us right now, if you had to pick how you think the SEC is going to end up, number of teams. We'll get you back on next week. But
you know what? I don't know what it is. I think Auburn's going to get in. I'll tell you that. Maybe they need, Tennessee's point guard went down, and maybe they need to win a game or two in the SEC tournament. They got 19 wins. 2 of their losses are against the best team in the country, and both of them have been close. So, yeah, I think Auburn gets in. What does that make it, 6 or 7? Kentucky's in now, right, despite their loss against Vanderbilt. So, I honestly, I haven't been paying that close attention to all the teams in the SEC, but I presume half a dozen. I'll be surprised if somebody outside the top 4 wins the Sun Belt. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Although I will say this, Troy and ODU better be on upset alert because those teams play pretty well. Arkansas State and Texas State is just a pain in the backside to play. So we'll see if there's an upset with those games today.
This is a basketball junkies Woodstock. I love it. Dave, tell people how they can follow you. You do great content every day, social media, everywhere. Schultzecast, start your day with that.
Yeah, at Schultzecast, and we do Locked On Sun Belt as well. It's starting to pick up, so that's great. We'll have a recap of day 2 of the Sun Belt Conference Tournament later. Well, it'll be later on tonight, but it'll be first thing tomorrow. I appreciate it, guys. John, we'll see you soon.
Hey,
on my way.
See you in a little while, Dave. Safe travels over.
All right, y'all be careful. Dave Schultz, I love getting him on here. He is a Q's Nation lifer. Here's a question. Matt Dean, you might want to take this as a compliment from one of our listeners, Dave Cody, 36 years, sports anchor, KTBC Channel 7 in Austin, Texas, deep in the heart of Texas. He asks this question about you, Matt Dean. Is Matt Dean related to the legend Joe Dean? We loved him when he came to Auburn. And all I got to say to Dave Cody, Matt Dean, John Hartwell, and everybody listening, welcome to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. A little string music from Matt Dean. Are you related to Joe Dean?
No relation, though. I know Junior very well.
He's a really good basketball guy.
Quick story. When I was working for Drake's staff as a student manager, I was graduating and had a chance to go to UCF and be a part of that staff as a GA. Started dating my wife at the time, so I stayed at Drake. And then, long story short, I've now been in Memphis for 32 years. So, but Joe Dean Jr. was at BSC for a long time as their director of athletics, and we coached in the same league and met him numerous times. Just a tremendous guy, and I'd like to claim that, but it's not a fact.
Well, it was worth a try.
Yeah,
Matt Dean, John Hartwell, AD Angle. This is just an awesome time of the year. Last night, those college basketball games last night. That's what we love. Sun Belt, let's talk about what's going on down there, because right in the same geographical footprint as the SEC is the Sun Belt. I think a lot of the fans, I'm not going to be surprised if they don't support each other. And how do you parlay that support? You talk about at ULM. I know I may not be the first check that the guy writes to LSU, but put me on your short list. And I think that's a hell of a statement and a great strategy to follow. Just like Matt in Memphis, someone may be a big giver to Memphis, but I just checked Rhodes' endowment for a school of less than 2,000 students. It's around 400 million and change.
394. That's right.
Okay, 394. When you hit close. 400, we're going to celebrate on the show. But
hell, it may be 400 today. We don't know about it.
A listener could be listening now and go, you know what? Matt Dean, that's Joe Dean's son. I'm all about it. I'm going to write some string music cash.
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. And people love college athletics regardless. And like you said, and it's a strategic move by the Sun Belt Conference to host our tournament. started, 4 or 5 days earlier than most of the rest of the tournaments, because you've got people who are interested in conference tournament play. It's survive and advance at its finest, and over the course of the next month, that's what is going to lock people into their televisions and seeing upsets and things like that. So, the strategy of doing that, ultimately with your championship game, and in our case in the Sun Belt Conference, the championship game being televised on ESPN on Monday night, that gives us an advantage. So you look at and I've been in Pensacola the last 2 days. Our women played on Tuesday, and that was the opening round of the tournament.
Yeah.
But I have to give this to the city of Pensacola. They're doing a great job hosting this event. The Pensacola Civic Center, a really nice venue, and kids, and when you talk about tournament atmosphere, yes, it obviously centers around the players, but when you've got pep bands and cheerleaders and all of that it brings in, obviously it's a positive economic impact for the community. But it's great. Most of the teams are staying out on Pensacola Beach. We're at the front end of spring break, maybe a week or two before most people's spring breaks. But, you think about the kids from Marshall or from James Madison, places like that. They're loving Pensacola Beach. So,
well, look, you're out there by Fort Pickens, man. Sabine Bay, know the area quite well. Had a girlfriend in college, has a place down there. We used to go there a lot. Love it. Pensacola Beach. In fact, if I ever stay at Navarre, I ride oh, holy cow. We got
hey, my makeshift mount went I had technical difficulties there.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to say this if they're listening, and I'm not going to give them the free publicity, but there's a company that makes cup holders and stuff like that. We'd love to have you as a sponsor. Just reach out to us at 901-606-1929. Remember, call before midnight. Mildred will answer. But got to say this. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. You know what? This is March Madness. Matt Dean, John Hartwell, these guys have forgotten more about basketball than most of us know. That's what I love. Talking X's and O's right after this. All right, got to say this, Matt and John. After the virus, coaches have just begun to dress just, in the warm-up suits. I mean, the Sopranos, Goodfellas. I mean, it's the look, But then again, I mean, a guy like Bruce Pearl, I mean, he sweats so much, and he would ruin a suit. And he lifts weights a lot too. He's a big guy. He almost looks like the Hulk over there. But I like asking both of y'all about the temperament during a game. And you pick the game. But that Iowa game over the weekend, Matt, what allows that to happen? Is it one team lets their guard down, or the other team is just relentless and does not stop?
I heard part of Izzo's post-game presser, and so Iowa, I think, is down 11 with 55 seconds to go. Yeah. So Iowa hits 5 threes. Michigan State has a turnover, but still, I think, was like 8 of 10 from the line. So you're trading 3 for 2 in a couple situations. You get 3 for 0 because of the turnover and maybe a missed 1-on-1. It's just something that doesn't happen. It's not like there was 4 or 5 turnovers, John. You played this game at a high level. It's one where the other team just made a barrage of threes. So I had an interesting conversation with the coach after this game. I said, and we don't do this because I've got hurt when my teams are not great foul shooting by the strategy of following up three, but I believe at a certain point in time you have to do that. But like when Michigan State missed that last free throw, I think there was only 7 or 8 seconds on the clock. We used to have it, I called it Vegas. I would yell out Vegas there, so we would practice it. We would foul that person at half court. So with 4 or 5 seconds to go, it would have been 101-98, and they couldn't have tied the game. And I know I'm not blaming Izzo, one of the greatest coaches, one of my favorite coaches of all time. But I think he even said it in the post-game presser. He goes, I kind of let my team down. We didn't coach that well in the last minute. And some of it's not his fault at all. But when it gets to a 3-point game, I had 2 questions that I asked my staff in the very first meeting before we started in October. 2 questions. 1, how are we going to defend a ball screen? And 2, what are we going to do up 3 late in the situation? And when are we going to foul? When are we not going to foul? And I want to know the answers to both those things because they're so important in the game of basketball. I would put on a Bill Self tape for 10 minutes every year to watch his ball screening defensive principles. And then I'm just the guy that fouls. I believe at a certain point in time, if you're up 3, you need to foul. That's just me, John.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there, Matt. And here's what it is. And to me, this philosophy not only applies to basketball, but it applies across sport. And it's not foolproof, but it goes back to you got to play to win. You don't play to not lose. You play to win, and you do what got you there. I mean, and obviously the days of the 4 corners is gone with the shot clock, but you can't get tentative. You can't take your foot off the gas, and you got to play to win.
People say that you're playing not to lose. Matt, you hear that term used a lot. But, again, the guy that parked my car late September of 2019 or 2020 told Audrey and me something. Scared man ain't never won a fight. I believe that.
Well, and just to add on what John said, even if you're a defensive coach, there are things you can do. We can run people off the 3-point line. We can deny them so hard that we give up a layup, but 2 is better than 3 defensively in every scenario you can imagine, especially when you're up 11 with a minute to play. So everything I did was grounded based on defense. If we were up big, we were going to make sure we didn't take a shot in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock in the last 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we can't get a good shot. We were going to run a set that we've practiced all week that we feel good about. And I also feel like, and John, you're probably a former post guy. Like I was a much smaller post guy, but I feel like in the last 4 minutes of a basketball game, and I think this is really important in college basketball, if you can't get to the rim or if you can't throw something into someone who can get to the rim and get fouled, you can be in trouble. Perimeter, the legs go in the last 5-10 minutes of a game. The jump shot shooting percentages look at everywhere in the country. I watched so many kids off the bounce take 21-foot jump shots. It's the dumbest shot in the game. It's only worth 2 points, and it's so close to the line. I just get frustrated with the mentality of you need to know what a good shot is and what's a bad shot. And to me, if that shot's taken from 23 feet, it's worth 3 points. It's a great shot. If it's open.
Yeah, and you see so many teams who start chasing the points too early. I mean, you don't have to have a 3 unless you get down there. Be satisfied. You can cut into a lead 2 points at a time. Sometimes more effectively than you can 3, and obviously it's a higher percentage shot. But your point about going into the post, being able to feed it to the post, whether the post player is going to take it to the rim or not, but oftentimes you'll see defenses collapse, and then that post player kicks it back out, and you get a much better look from 3.
You think about this, guys. In a game, Memphis was playing Oral Roberts University years ago, down by 7 or 8 points with 32 seconds left. Won the game. I think Dana Kirk was the coach back then. You just always have to I think the message here is, I like what you said, John. People are trying to get the points too early. They're forcing it. Matt, you elaborated and expanded on that. That's what happens when you get into the NCAA tournament. It's kill or be killed. One loss and you're done until next season. I mean, you're going to be practicing summer leagues and all like that, which begs the question. Right now, you look at the top 4 teams in the country. We're going to have 68 in the field. The 4 play-in teams. I'll start with you, Matt. Kansas, Houston, Purdue, UCLA, Alabama. How many of those you think will be there in the end when the Final Four tips off?
I
put you on the spot, but that's what we do.
No, I personally think at least 2. I told you earlier in the show, I really like Kansas and Houston for different reasons. The thing that people don't realize about Bill Self, besides he's a Hall of Fame coach, he's a guy that you're gonna see your team playing that aggressive man-to-man, and then he's gonna come out of a timeout and he's gonna triangle them to you. I mean, he is just so savvy. He doesn't panic if he's down 6 or 7 with 5 to play, because he knows his team has the ability to get multiple stops in a row, and that's big for me. Another guy like that is Houston. They have a really good player, Marcus Sasser, but they can guard you, and they guard you for as soon as you get off the bus.
Yeah.
Now, the team that's kind of lost a little luster, if you've watched Purdue lately, they've had some losses. We don't talk about West Coast teams a lot, but I like Mick Cronin because he's a defensive guy. I've known Mick for a long time. So those are teams I kind of like. I know, John, I've talked about this all year. We're going to have someone in there that's not supposed to be there because there's not a dominant team. Even that Houston and Kansas team I talked to you about, they are flawed, okay? There's not a dominant team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I do think UCLA has an opportunity to win it all.
Yeah.
Don't totally discount Arizona. They are a very talented team too. And then you could have somebody, Alabama is still a really good basketball team. I don't know with the unfortunate loss of the guard yesterday or 2 days ago that Tennessee suffered, if they can necessarily get there now. But I think this year's tournament is going to be as wide open as any in recent history, because there's just, like you said, there's just not that dominant team, and there's probably 10 or 12 teams who could make a run and get to the Final Four.
John, I'm going to throw one at you, and I don't know if you can do this, but if you would, while you're at the Sun Belt tournament for the men, I'd love to know how many of these teams that are competing have a bunch of 4th and 5th year players versus most of the Power 5. You might flip 50 or 75% of your roster from one year to the next. I say that because it pays off in the tournament. You get a bunch of really good 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds against the 22 and 23-year-olds. And you know that from having to play BYU with guys in their mid-20s on that team because they take their 2 years off for the mountain bike mission. So can you make sense out of that?
Yeah, I do. We're so relatively young in the transfer portal days that, you still have a pretty good mixture across all levels. I mean, I'll just look at our roster. We've got a couple of guys that transferred from UAB. We've got a couple of guys that have played at the Power 5 level. We've got a handful of guys that have been there 3 or 4 years, but it's just, and I think that's pretty consistent with the group of 5. And I think when you get to the Power 5, you've got a little more consistency in those guys, but you've got, some who have transferred up to play, and you've lost some on your roster. So it's such a hodgepodge right now, but you're right. And the other thing is, don't discount, and it's not always plug and play, but there are a handful of grad transfers out there that are, 22, 23 years old that have played college basketball 5 years, who have really stepped in and done some really good things. I mean, I'll give you an example of my last institution, Utah State, who just absolutely boat raced UNLV in Las Vegas last night. Now 23-7. One of their best players, a guy named Taylor Funk, who played at St. Joe's in Philly for 4 years, came to Utah State as a grad transfer, and he's really a key cog in that team. And they've got another guy who's also a grad transfer, Dan Aiken, who actually played as a freshman for Ryan Odom on the team, the UMBC team that beat Virginia in the NCAA tournament. Those two guys are in their first year in the program, but they're both, 23, 24 years old and have made, significant contributions.
Yeah, this is a question that just came in, interesting, from Jim Swarthout, Provo, Utah. Do players at Utah State and the University of Utah, if they're Mormons, have to take off 2 years just like the ones at BYU?
Yeah, a fair amount of them do. Again, that's not an institutional decision. That's a church decision and an individual decision. By those student athletes. But there are a fair amount, probably more at Utah State than there are at the University of Utah. But there are some at both institutions. Great example there, Stephen Ashworth, averaging about a little over 19 points a game at Utah State. He served a 2-year mission. So he's eligibility wise, he's only a junior, but he's 22 years old.
Yeah. Well, you think about riding all over some country on a mountain bike for 2 years. You talk about getting in great shape physically and mentally and having more than a door or two slammed in your face. I mean, those guys come back, man, they can handle anything. Just like someone asked a question earlier in the show about what's Tommy Tuberville going to do as a senator? How's he going to know how to deal with all this media? And the response was, you've been the football coach at Ole Miss and Auburn for 10 years. Like there's no pressure there. And the way the media, oh my goodness, you can handle about anything. But I just wanted to, that was just a good question from Jim Swarthout, Provo, Utah. Both of y'all got just a few minutes left. Again, this is getting to be awesome time of year. You're down on 38, John. Matt, you're in the control center there, and we'll be watching a lot of basketball. We're going to do brackets on this show, okay? We're going to have a bracket challenge, and we're going to get people follow us. It's too confusing to try to get, people to send brackets from all over, but this group right here and a lot of our guests will want to do it. But I'll say a couple of things. Folks, we're here 6 days a week. We got a mission. History, traditions, and heroes. Bring on the best guests. John Hartwell, Matt Dean, Dave Schultz, Billy Roberts, Gary Harris, the fact finders, the people who are there. And most often in life, we're going to see the face of Christ in the least among us. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. And when you're down on the Florida Panhandle in L.A., Lower Alabama, you are in God's country. There is no question about it. The great seafood, the great everything. Matt Dean over at Rhodes. We're here 6 days a week, folks. Hit the IPTAM, the Patreon button. I pay $10 a month. Grow the show. We're getting bigger and bigger every day. Let's close out here real quick, guys. John and Matt. John, give me your pick, other than Louisiana Monroe, to win that Sun Belt Conference Championship tournament. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to stay in the league. I think our Warhawks, and if it's not our Warhawks, I think the winner of a game Saturday between again, assuming we beat Georgia Southern today, between Monroe and Louisiana Lafayette for the as who goes on to advance.
Yeah, and this is where, if you want to build a bracket, Matt, you want to be watching these games, don't you?
You do, and I want to throw an AD thing in here as my last thing for today. This is also a tough time of year to ADs. I'll give you two examples. Like if your program has had a tough year, everybody's disappointed they're not in the tournament, so everybody's coming at you as an AD thinking, who's our next basketball coach? For us, our men's program, I was able to hire Zoe Goodson 3 years away from Tubby Smith. We won 18 games this year. 2 years ago, we won 2. And you think, gosh, it's incredible. He's done an incredible job. But, trying to keep guys, too, this year. I mean, so you're either in a situation where you're trying to keep your guy or woman or find a new person, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot going on with basketball ADs this time of year, too, because we're hearing a lot of noise from everybody about why our team's in the tournament, and if our team is in the tournament, how are you going to keep that person? So it's
absolutely,
it's the greatest time of year. And John, I'm pulling for ULM today or tomorrow, and that's my pick too.
Yeah, we all are. And remember, free speech, First Amendment, alive and well. We tell the truth, we find the truth, nothing but the whole truth on Sidelines. Have a great day, everybody. We're out of here. See you tomorrow.